Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to help you navigate the currents of global and domestic affairs.
That's right.
Today, we're diving into part one of the key developments from June 18th, 2025. Our mission, as always, is to pull out those, essential nuggets of information and insight, help you stay informed without getting bogged down.
Exactly. And especially for those of you preparing for competitive exams like the UPSC, this should be really useful. Some topics might be new, others might be a good chance for revision on things we've touched on before. Reinforce that core understanding.
Absolutely. We'll definitely flag those connections. And we've got a lot to cover today. We're talking global conservation, international labor rules, some really cutting-edge quantum tech.
Nuclear security updates, too.
Right, and India's latest diplomatic moves, plus some important domestic stuff. So yeah, packed agenda. Let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
Okay, first up, something pretty spectacular. The big cats. There was the first assembly of the International Big Cat Alliance, the IBCA, in New Delhi.
Yes, that's a significant development.
It really feels like it highlights India's growing role in global conservation efforts, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. What's really fascinating here is how India is sort of stepping up as a leader, an architect in global conservation. The IBCA isn't just, another meeting. It's a formal coalition, multi-country, multi-agency.
How many countries are involved?
95. It includes both the countries where these cats live, the range countries, and non-range countries, too. And they've set up an apex body that'll meet at least every 2 years. So there's structure.
Got it. And which big cats are we talking about specifically?
It covers 7 species: tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, cheetah, jaguar, and puma. The launch itself was back in April 2023, timed with 50 years of India's Project Tiger, which has been, hugely successful.
Right.
So the main idea is collaboration, sharing what works, the best practices in conserving these animals globally. And India is the host country and the secretariat.
And beyond just saving these amazing animals, why is this work so vital? What are the broader impacts?
Oh, it's huge. Protecting big cats means protecting biodiversity overall. They're often keystone species, meaning they help balance whole ecosystems.
Okay.
And that protection feeds directly into climate change mitigation. You're safeguarding forests, water sources, carbon sinks.
Ah, right, the habitat connection.
Exactly. Plus, there's an economic angle. Ecotourism, livelihoods for local communities, it all ties together. We don't need to list every single conservation status now, but it's good to generally recall the IUCN CEATS Wildlife Protection Act stuff. Maybe remember that jaguar and puma, while part of the IBCA, aren't native to India.
Okay.
But the real takeaway, I think, is India using its Project Tiger experience as a model for global biodiversity action. It's quite something.
It really is. A great example of global cooperation. Now, shifting from wildlife to, the human side of things, labor rights and social justice, the ILO's been busy.
Very busy. The second annual forum of the Global Coalition for Social Justice just happened. It was held alongside the 113th International Labor Conference, the ILC, in Geneva.
And this coalition, that's an ILO initiative.
Yes, launched in 2023. The goal is to pull everyone together, global, regional, national players, to push for social justice through more coherent policies. And the ILC itself, that's the big annual meeting of the International Labor Organization, where they set global labor standards.
So what came out of this latest ILC? Any major decisions we should know about?
Yes, several key things. First, they adopted a brand new convention, the Biological Hazards in the Working Environment Convention 2025. That's Convention number 192.
Biological hazards. That sounds timely.
Extremely. It's actually the first international standard focused specifically on biological risks at work. It calls for national policies, protective measures, the whole deal.
Okay, what else?
They also approved an amendment to the Maritime Labor Convention, the MLC, from 2006. This update recognizes seafarers as key workers and stresses their right to shore leave and repatriation.
Important for global trade.
Absolutely. And for listeners tracking this, India ratified the MLC back in 2015. That might be a useful revision point. Another really important development was the first discussion on setting standards for decent work in the platform economy.
Ah, the gig economy.
Precisely. The ILO is directly tackling how to improve rights and conditions for those workers. It's a huge growing area.
Definitely needed.
And finally, there's a strong resolution on reducing informality. It's pushing for urgent action to improve conditions, extend social protection, create decent jobs, especially for people in the informal sector.
So connecting the dots, the ILO seems to be really trying to adapt to the modern economy.
Exactly. It shows they're trying to stay relevant, addressing new challenges like platform work and ensuring social justice doesn't get left behind by technology.
Okay, vital updates on the labor front. Now, let's switch gears completely to something really cutting edge. Quantum communication.
Yes, this is fascinating territory.
Tell us about this latest development, DRDO and IIT Delhi.
That's right. They demonstrated secure quantum communication over about 1 kilometer using a free space optical link. So no wires.
Wow, 1 kilometer of free space, that sounds like a leap.
It is. ISRO did a demo over 300 meters back in 2021, so this is a significant step up. It's part of the DRDO project focusing on photonic tech for free space quantum key distribution, or QKD.
And the security aspect, how good is it?
Here's where it gets really interesting. They achieved a very low quantum bit error rate, QBE, less than 7%.
Okay, and low QBE means?
It means a very, very low chance of someone eavesdropping successfully. Essentially, it points toward truly unhackable communication.
How does QKD actually work in simple terms, if possible?
Well, simple is relative in quantum. Basically, QKD relies on quantum mechanics principles, things like quantum entanglement, where particles stay connected no matter the distance, and quantum cryptography. The core idea is that the very act of trying to observe or intercept the quantum key disturbs it in a detectable way. Physics itself becomes the security guard.
So any eavesdropper automatically reveals themselves?
Pretty much. It's a fundamental shift. We're building communication where the laws of physics, not just complex codes, provide the security.
That's incredible. What are the bigger implications then? For India, for the world?
Game-changing potential. Secure key distribution, even if your devices aren't perfect. Built-in eavesdropping detection. And doing it free space without needing expensive fiber optic cables is huge. Think difficult terrain, dense cities, military applications.
Right, much more deployable.
Exactly. This opens doors for real-time quantum cybersecurity, long-distance secure links, and eventually the quantum internet. Securing critical infrastructure, defense, everything.
Amazing potential. But from that high-tech frontier, let's turn to a persistent global danger, nuclear weapons. The Cypria Yearbook 2025 has some warnings.
Yes, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's latest yearbook doesn't paint a rosy picture. It warns about trends suggesting a new kind of nuclear arms race. While the total number of warheads globally has dropped since the Cold War because more old ones are retired than new ones built.
That sounds positive.
It sounds positive, but the worrying trend is modernization. All 9 nuclear-armed states kept upgrading their arsenals in 2024. It's about quality, not just quantity now.
And who's expanding or upgrading most notably?
China is reported to be expanding its arsenal the fastest. Cypria estimates they now have at least 600 warheads. The report also suggests India's arsenal increased slightly, from 172 to 180 warheads. That puts it just above Pakistan's estimate of 170.
Okay. And what about the materials needed for bombs?
Fissile materials, yes. Highly enriched uranium, HEU, and separated plutonium. China and Pakistan produce both. India and Israel have primarily focused on plutonium production, different routes to capability. But beyond numbers, Cypria highlights new risks, things like AI, cyber warfare capabilities, space weapons, missile defense, even quantum computing. They'd all destabilize the nuclear balance.
So technology is adding new layers of complexity and danger.
Precisely. And adding to the concern, arms control efforts are struggling. New START, the U.S.-Russia treaty, expires in early 2026, and there's no sign yet of talks for a replacement.
That leaves a big gap.
A very big, worrying gap. It really raises questions about maintaining global peace and non-proliferation when technology is changing so fast.
It does. Maybe for listeners, especially those revising, could you quickly recap the main treaties aimed at controlling nuclear proliferation, just the basics?
Sure. Quick refresher is always useful. The big one is the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty from 1970. It's legally binding, aims for disarmament. But key states like India, Pakistan, Israel never joined, and North Korea left.
Okay.
Then there's the PTBT, the Partial Test Ban Treaty from 1963. Bans tests in the atmosphere, space, underwater. India did sign and ratify that one. The CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty in 1996, bans all nuclear explosions. India didn't sign it.
Right.
More recently, the TPNW, Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, 2017, very comprehensive bans. Again, India didn't sign. And New START from 2011, that's the current U.S.-Russia bilateral treaty limiting strategic arsenals, but its future is uncertain.
Okay, thanks for that recap. It helps place the current concerns in context. Let's move now to India's diplomacy. A significant visit to Cyprus recently, after 23 years.
Yes, the Prime Minister's visit to Cyprus was quite notable. They signed a joint declaration focused on implementing their comprehensive partnership. And a significant gesture, the Indian PM received Cyprus's highest civilian honor, the Grand Cross of the Order of Makarios III.
What were the key points in that joint declaration, and why is Cyprus strategically important for India right now?
Well, they reaffirmed support for a rules-based international order, UN Charter Principles standard, but important reaffirmations. They also committed to resuming UN efforts for a lasting solution to the Cyprus question, the division of the island since 1974. India supports a bizonal, bicommunal federation based on UN resolutions. Crucially, Cyprus strongly backed India against cross-border terrorism, condemning the recent Pahalgam attack. That's significant diplomatic support. Strategically, Cyprus matters for several reasons. First, it helps balance the growing Turkey-Pakistan relationship. Turkey's been quite vocal supporting Pakistan on Kashmir, for example.
Counterweight.
A subtle one, yes. Second, Cyprus is a gateway to Europe. It fits into energy corridor ideas and connectivity initiatives like the India-Middle East-Europe Corridor, IMA.
Right, the connectivity angle.
And economically, Cyprus is already a top 10 investor in India. Over $14.6 billion invested since 2000. Plus, Cyprus holds the EU Council presidency in 2026, so it can potentially advocate for India's interests within the EU, boosting India-EU ties. And Cyprus also supports India's bid for a permanent UNSC seat, NSG membership, etc.
So multiple layers to that relationship.
Definitely. It's about diversifying strategic partnerships.
Fascinating diplomatic maneuvering. Okay, let's round out this part of our deep dive with some quickfire updates on important domestic developments in India. These are also crucial for a full picture.
Absolutely. Let's run through some key ones. Useful for keeping track may be revision for some areas. First, the Census 2027. The Registrar General of India, under the Home Ministry, has notified it. 2 phases. House listing, then population enumeration.
Anything different this time?
Yes, 2 big things. It will include caste enumeration, and it's going largely digital mobile apps, even a self-enumeration option, modernizing a massive exercise.
Okay. Next.
National security again. Cybersecurity exercise. The Defense Cyber Agency started this. It's about boosting cyber resilience, simulating real threats for training. Very important in today's world.
Indeed. What about health?
The World Health Assembly passed a resolution. Skin diseases as a global public health priority. This affects nearly 2 billion people, but is often overlooked. It calls for a global action plan prevention, treatment, research. A big step for neglected diseases.
Good to hear. Finance.
RBI conducted a switch auction. About 25,000 crore offered, around 9,000 crore accepted. This started in 2019.
Remind us what a switch auction does.
Basically, the government swaps its shorter-term debt for longer-term debt. It helps manage the overall public debt maturity profile, improves debt sustainability, and helps develop the bond market. It's done via the eCuber portal.
Smart financial management. Digital India.
Yes, the PM1 scheme. TRAI just released a tariff order for the public data offices, the PDOs. Remember, PM1, launched in 2020, aims to massively increase public Wi-Fi hotspots, especially in rural areas. It lets local shops become PDOs and offer Wi-Fi without needing complex licenses or fees. Boosts connectivity from the ground up.
Great initiative. Tribal welfare.
The 30 Abba Janhagadari Avan, launched by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. It's billed as the largest tribal empowerment campaign. They're running benefit saturation camps right down at the village level, ensuring access to government services, entitlements like Aadhaar cards. It's part of the Janjatia Gaurav Varsh and focuses on last-mile delivery, particularly under the PM Janman scheme for vulnerable tribal groups.
Okay, a couple more.
Sure. The Samarth program. CDOT, the Telecom R&D Center, gave grants to 18 startups under this incubation program. Supports telecom and IT startups with funds, infrastructure, mentoring. Then Fast Patrol Vessel, FPV Atoll, was launched for the Indian Coast Guard. Built by Goa Shipyard, it's the 5th in a series of 8. Designed for coastal protection, surveillance, importantly, 60% indigenous content, aligning with Udmanir Bardvarat.
Good progress on self-reliance. One last one.
Rinderpest. Icar-Ni HSID in Bhopal has been recognized as a top-level Rinderpest holding facility by world bodies. Rinderpest, or cattle plague, was a devastating viral disease in animals.
Whoa.
Yes, key point. It's eradicated. It's only the 2nd infectious disease ever wiped out globally after smallpox. Doesn't affect humans, thankfully.
Wow, okay. So pulling all that together, what's the big picture for our listeners, especially those preparing for exams?
It really shows how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? Global alliances for conservation, shifts in labor standards, breakthroughs in deep tech like quantum, ongoing nuclear risks, strategic diplomacy, and then these very specific domestic programs driving change in connectivity, welfare, security, finance.
You really need to see how they link up.
Exactly.
Oh.
Understanding one often sheds light on another. It's about building that holistic view.
What a packed deep dive for June 18th, Part 1. We've covered so much ground from global efforts for big cats and labor rights to the frontiers of quantum tech and the sobering realities of nuclear security.
And then bringing it back to India's strategic moves with Cyprus and those key domestic initiatives.
It really does hammer home how all these different threads weave together to form the complex picture of current affairs.
Absolutely. And maybe a thought to ponder as you continue your preparation. How do these seemingly disparate things, quantum breakthroughs, conservation pacts, new labor rules, how do they collectively shape our future? And perhaps what responsibilities come with being informed about this rapidly evolving landscape? Something to think about beyond just the facts.
That's a great question to reflect on. We really hope you found this deep dive insightful and helpful for your understanding. If you did, please do give us a like, subscribe to the deep dive for more analyses like this, and maybe share it with friends or colleagues who could also benefit.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, thank you for joining us today.